My name is Sarah Pearson, and welcome to our October Successful Women in Business with the Boca Chamber. Today's topic is managing health as a working woman, diet, exercise, and mental health. You know, we need this pre-COVID. We need this even more now. And I love that not only is diet and exercise, but mental health is a part of the conversation as well. I think in my time as being, a part of the Successful Women in Business and having there always be at least one topic a year on women's health, I love that I'm starting to see mental health be a part of that conversation more and more. So not just physical, but mental. I do want to recognize the sponsors of our Successful Women in Business program. These are companies that support year-round the success of women, and they elevate women. And so I want to recognize our Ruby sponsors, Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, TrustBridge, and West Boca Medical Center, who is our speaker. We have a doctor from West Boca today. And our Sapphire sponsors, Bell Rock Capital, Center State Bank, Florida Blue, Northwestern Mutual, and Toshiba. So thank you all. Let's give them a round of applause in our offices for their support. And they're constantly supporting quite a few things in our community. So we're very lucky to have them as a part of our community. I do want to give you a personal story of West Boca Medical Center. They are my hospital. They're very close to my house. And I've unfortunately gone there a few times because I've been sick or a kid has fallen. But they have given us the best care imaginable. Their new CEO is unbelievable. He's on our board. And just the overall support of West Boca throughout the community has been amazing. My daughter was an intern there through West Boca High School. The high school has a medical program, and up until COVID happened, prior to that, they would take students that are in the medical program and actually have them do rounds and learn at the medical center. And I just think that's amazing that they're reaching out not just to colleges at FAU and what's happening there, but to the younger kids too, and getting them involved in medicine at a young age. So, I'm very impressed with everything that they do. So now I'd like to introduce our speaker. She has a very short bio. So here we go. Dr. Jessica Schwartz. She's an internal medicine specialist in Boca Raton. She's a native Floridian. She's affiliated with Tenet Florida Physician Services and West Boca Medical Center. Her areas of interest include general internal medicine, obesity medicine, and holistic well-being and preventative medicine for all age-related needs. So, without further ado, Dr. Schwartz, thank you.
Hi, thank you for my wonderful welcome. Again, like Sarah said, my name is Dr. Jessica Schwartz, and just a little bit about me. I, again, am a Florida native. I went to the University of Florida for my undergrad education. I then went to Nova Southeastern University for my medical school training, and then I did my residency training down at Broward General. And now I currently work at West Boca Medical Center in the outpatient clinical arena. So today we're going to be talking about managing health as a working woman, diet, exercise, and mental health. And I guess what I want to say is the point of today's conversation, it's difficult to say this is to you as a general audience, how to manage your day-to-day, because everyone has different situations. But what I do want to help you do is sort of navigate through the world of health, diet, exercise, mental health, kind of answer questions, things that can be confusing, because I know that there's a lot of information out there. We just want to make sure that we're getting good, correct information to our patients and to people in the community. So with that, I think we will start. So I think we can go to our next slide. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm following along on my big computer. So, okay, so let's start with diet. I get a lot of patients who ask me, what diet should I be choosing? How do you feel about this diet? What about keto? And all these things. So my feeling on diet in general is I like to look at it from like a biochemical perspective. So in order to understand diet, I think we need to understand something about cells and what food is made of and how food is actually used in the body. So when we talk about food, what we're talking about, foods are made of macronutrients, okay? And there's three main macronutrients that we talk about. We talk about carbohydrates, we talk about proteins, and we talk about fats. And part of this is, as you can see, some foods fit into categories that are just carbohydrates, just mostly protein and then mostly fat, but then there's some overlap. Things like, peanut butter, for example, has a lot of fat, but it also has a lot of protein. And why this is important is because all cells in the body are made up of these macronutrients. Every cell in the body needs carbohydrates, proteins, and fats to operate. So any fad diet or any diet out there that's saying cut this food group out or just eat cabbage or whatever, you need all of these, and you need them in certain proportions to operate at a full healthy level. You can lose weight on some of these fad diets, but the problem is it's not sustainable for long-term health and wellness. So when we talk about what kind of protein or what kind of macronutrients we should be using, we talk about lean protein. So what does that mean? That means that it has a low fat content. So things like fishes have a low fat content, seafood, poultry, things of that nature. Then when we talk about carbohydrates, people think carbs and they get, especially recently with keto being so popular, they get very fearful. And what I'll say is not all carbohydrates are created equal. And what you want to look for when you're looking at carbohydrates is we refer to something called a glycemic index. And what that means is how complex is this carbohydrate? How much fiber is associated and built into this carbohydrate? Because that determines how your body will break it down. So foods with a low glycemic index, they are distributed, the sugar levels are more of a steady state when you eat it versus, so a low glycemic index food would be like a whole grain bread versus like a white bagel. A white bagel probably has like the highest glycemic index of all carbohydrates. And basically what that means is your blood sugars are going to spike as soon as you eat that food. The problem with that is once you do that repeatedly to the body, that's when we develop things like insulin sensitivity. That's when we develop things like diabetes. So you can eat carbohydrates, and in fact, you need carbohydrates. We'll talk about that in the next slide. But you just need to be eating the right kind of carbohydrates. Healthy fats. So what are healthy fats? We're talking about avocados, olive oils, nuts, peanut butters, depending on the quality of peanut butter, things of that nature. And what makes them healthy is how they're structurally made. When you have unsaturated fats, chemically they're linear. When you have saturated fats, they're actually kinked. So they're sort of like rigid. And what happens, that rigidness allows them to embed more easily into the arteries. And that's what makes them harmful, basically. Okay, and I talked about how not everything fits into like discrete categories. Some of the things like beans fit into carbohydrates and proteins. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this slide is a little bit busy, but I just kind of wanted to give you, because again, I think it's important to understand how your body uses food to understand what a good diet really entails. And so again, foods again are made out of these fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. So when you eat proteins, your body breaks that down into amino acids. The amino acids are then either turned into body protein. So if you're doing like a strength exercise regimen, your body will use those proteins to actually build muscle. The other thing that it can do with it is it can take the amino acids and they can shift them into the carbohydrate realm. And what that does is essentially it breaks it down to make more energy source for the body. Carbohydrates, again, so they break down into glucose. You can then, it can either be used to straight away to feed the metabolism, feed the tissues energy, or it can go into glycogen stores. So the more energy that you're burning, so if you're doing cardiovascular exercise, your body will burn more calories throughout the day. You will have less of these glycogen stores and more burning of these carbohydrates. And then fats, these are broken down into fatty acids and kind of the same situation. So there you do store the body fats. Excess glucose can also be shifted into this fat stores if we've tapped out on our glycogen necessity. It will be transferred into the fat realm. And again, these ultimately, if you're out of carbohydrates, your body will start to break down fats and use that for energy. So basically, it's either we're building body storage, so either in the form of proteins, fats, or glycogen, and then we're utilizing these. And how much you're exercising determines where these things are shifted and how much of them we're using. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so then we talk about we talk about macronutrients, right? Everybody hears about macros. So what are micronutrients? Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. So things like B vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C, minerals, potassium. These are your electrolytes, magnesium, calcium, iron, zinc. These are all most readily found in fruits and vegetable sources. So this is one of the reasons why eating fruits and vegetables is very important, because these are a good high source of these vitamins and minerals. I know some people, some of the theory on losing weight, it's calories in versus calories out. And yes, if you eat, say, 1,200 calories worth of Snickers bars versus 1,200 calories of a well-rounded diet, in the short term, yes, in theory, you would lose some fat, but you would become deficient in all of these nutrients. And so calories aren't created equal. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so how do we incorporate this into a diet that is usable in your everyday life? The American Heart Association recommends the Mediterranean diet, and for most of my patients who don't have some underlying chronic illness that prevents them from needing some sort of other specialized diet, this is what I recommend for most people. And basically what it entails is the bottom is, you can see the bottom of the pyramid is all of your fruits, vegetables, and carbohydrates. And that's coming from, so your carbohydrates are coming from fruits and vegetables and then whole grains. Again, those carbohydrates are higher in fiber, so your body breaks them down more easily, and it doesn't cause these insulin spikes that lead to diabetes. So that's the base of your pyramid. You're also getting your fats again from things like olive oil, avocados, nuts, olives. Most of your protein is coming from seafood or poultry. Again, lean proteins, less of the porks and the red meats, beef, because these have, again, higher fat contents as a ratio to protein. Okay, and again, and we'll talk more about like water intake and exercise, but that's sort of a guiding. And then you want to, limit your sweets and things like that. And the things that are obvious and we always want to avoid: fried foods are never good. Sweets in moderation. And again, the super fatty cuts of meat, sausages, things like that. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay. So again, this sort of just goes back to what I was talking about before, and about how not all calories are created equal. So a lot of people are interested in how many calories should I be getting, or how many calories should I be taking in a day? Is 1,200 calories the right amount for everyone? And the short answer is no, because everyone has a different, male versus female, your weight, your height, essentially your BMI, how old you are, and how much activity you get. And that basically determines your recommended daily caloric intake to maintain your weight. Now, I put all of this in the next slide as well. And this is more for just your reference, and so that you have this and you can calculate it, and you can see, if you're interested, you can find your the equation for your height, your weight, your age, how much your activity level is, and then that's your expected caloric intake to maintain your current weight. And now if you go somewhat lower than that, you will lose weight. And in the next slide, we'll kind of talk about this more in sort of proportions and things like that. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so, all right. So then how do we incorporate all of this? So now before I say all of this, there are calculators and apps and things like that you can get on your smartphone that will do all of this for you. But I think it's kind of important to know like what actually goes into these things, and you know, how they're calculated. And I'm not telling, and I don't want it to seem as though I'm recommending everyone should be like counting their macros. I know that that's intensive. I don't do that. But I think what it is good for is if you're having trouble with your diet and you're like, I don't understand why I'm losing weight. I think that what I usually tell people is to download one of these macro calculators and put your diet into it and see how many calories you're having. See what proportion of things you're having. You may be having not nearly as much protein as you think that you are. I know that I put my information in and I was getting much more fat than I anticipated and not nearly as many carbohydrates. So it might be it's an interesting and objective way to sort of look at your diet as a whole. And again, this is sort of just for your reference. If you are in the maintaining weight, you would take that caloric intake number and you would split that. Again, there are calculators that do this automatically for you, but just for educational purposes, you can see all the proportions are different. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to eat more proteins. If you're trying to gain muscle, you want to eat more carbs. And it varies depending on what you're trying to accomplish. I think that's it. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay. So I get questions about portions. And basically for portions, again, you want to sort of look at it as again, like a balance. You want to be balanced and you want to get some degree of carbohydrates, some degree of protein. And then one of the most important things, and I think is underestimated, is making sure that you do get fiber in your diet. And how you do that is through vegetables and fruits. So when you look at your plate, you want to have some, about half of it to be vegetables. And then a quarter of it should be a good lean quality protein, again, and complex carbohydrates. So things like sweet potatoes, wheat breads, whole grains, things of that nature. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, and then I have people who ask me about intermittent fasting. What I'll say about intermittent fasting, is I think it's good as long as it's not taken to the extreme, because I've seen people, I have patients who are like, I've been intermittent fasting, and I ask them, okay, so what's your ratio? What are you doing? And they'll be like, well, I'm fasting 23 hours a day. Absolutely not. Don't do that. That's not, I don't advise that at all. But if you think about it intuitively, what have we always been sort of told is don't eat too close to bedtime, right? If you stop eating at 7 p.m., so you have your dinner at 6, and then you don't eat again until you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. the next morning, you've already fasted for 12 hours. So it's not out of the, it's not an unrealistic goal or something that can't be incorporated into a normal lifestyle. Okay, and so what are the benefits to intermittent fasting? Because there are benefits to it, again, as long as we're not taking it to the extreme. It does preserve muscle mass. It helps with growing because it increases your growth hormone. It helps with bone density and things like that. It has been shown to increase mood. It also does increase your leptin, which makes you feel less hungry. You do have increased brain function. Insulin sensitivity goes down with this, and it does decrease oxidative damage and inflammation to the body. So there are benefits to it. Again, I think you can incorporate it into your life and it not be too extreme, as long as you do it sort of at a reasonable level. Okay, so I think we can go to the next one. Okay. So water intake. This is one of the big ones, at least in my perspective, because I feel like a lot of people don't get enough water, and it is so vitally important to your health. So the recommendation is 8 ounces of water every day, but like, why is that important? It's important with digestion. It's important with absorbing nutrients. It's avoiding constipation. It helps with flushing the kidneys to flush out waste products in the body. When you're dehydrated, the blood gets thicker, so you're not transporting oxygen to the body as easily. This is, I believe, the cause of a lot of fatigue for people, because the blood is more sluggish, and you're not actually transporting it as quickly or as easily as you could if you were well hydrated. Helps lubricate the joints, helps with respirations, regulates your body temperature. So all of these things are important. And people will ask me, what about things like Crystal Light? The problem with things like Crystal Light is they have a lot of artificial sugars in them. And instead of hydrating you, they actually dehydrate you. So if you drink, 2 giant things of Crystal Light a day, you're actually not, yes, you're taking in fluids, but the fluids that you are taking in are actually running through the kidneys and taking all the water with it. So you want to stick with water. I do recommend, if you're someone who runs lower blood pressures, things like Gatorades and Propels, because they are rich in electrolytes, or if you are working out a lot, it's important to replace those electrolytes because you lose a lot of electrolytes in sweat. And so, yeah. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Trying to keep on track with my timing here. Okay, people ask me what kind of supplements I suggest. I suggest a multivitamin for pretty much everyone. I think it's a good thing to take just in case you are having any deficits in your diet. For women who are postmenopausal, we do recommend calcium and vitamin D supplements. I think it is beneficial to take some, like an omega fatty 3 fatty acid, especially if you're someone who has, sort of borderline high cholesterol. For people who are feeling fatigued, I do recommend B12 because a lot of people can be deficient. Obviously, and we'll talk about this at the end, you want to be doing your annual visits, getting your blood work done and things like that, but can help with fatigue. People with GI issues, prebiotics and probiotics are good. what is prebiotics? Prebiotics are a special plant fiber, and basically they help feed the bacteria, and the probiotic is the good bacteria that lives in your gut. It's replenishing that. That helps with digestion. People who have bloating, sometimes I recommend digestive enzymes because that will help with actually breaking down the food. It can eliminate some of the bloating. Okay. Oops, I think we can go to the next one. Okay, so that was sort of thoughts on diet. Again, I'm not encouraging everyone to go start counting their macros, but I think it's good to have a background of sort of, the biochemistry of nutrition, to understand sort of what you're eating and how to sort of balance everything. Okay, so now let's talk about exercise. So the current recommendation but in the medical community is 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise 5 times a week, or roughly 150 minutes. And then as far as strength training, at least 2 times per week for strength training activities. Then the question I get a lot is, for people who are doing cardiovascular exercise, what heart rate am I supposed to get to? What is a good heart rate? Because cardiovascular exercise, we're thinking about anything that's getting the heart pumping faster than your just sitting normal heart rate. So let me go to the next slide, because I think it's, so that's okay, we can stay here. Sorry. Your max, so how we calculate this. So your max heart rate is 220 minus your age, and then your target is 85% of that. So now we can go to the next slide, I apologize. And so here you can see sort of how this looks on a scale. So here's your age, here's your heart rate, and so here's your maximum. You can see the 220 minus your age and sort of where you are. So if you're in this range, you're having you're getting your benefit for cardiovascular exercise. When your heart rate falls within this range, again, based on your age, you're in the fat burning zone. And the beauty is now there are so many Fit watches and Apple watches and apps and all these things that do a lot of these things for you. So they can tell you how much time you spent in the cardio range or in the fat burning range. Those are all available. But if you're interested in how where this actually comes from and what the rationale is, this is that. And then we can go to the next slide. Okay. All right, and so here's another, and this slide I like because it also tells you what you're burning at each one of these intensities. So very light activity, when your heart rate is 0 to 60% of the maximum, you're burning more fat and carbs. And then basically as you go up, see, now you're challenging yourself, you're at a moderate rate, you're doing about 50% carbs and 50% fat. And then at your maximum intensity, you're essentially burning off all carbs. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay. All right, so that's sort of the thoughts on cardiovascular exercise. Again, getting your heart rate up, doing this at least for 30 minutes, 5 times a week, or the equivalent of 150 minutes. And that's really any exercise that's going to do that. That's whether it's running, jogging, swimming, Zumba, whatever you want to do. Okay, so now let's talk about the other component, because I think a lot of people think of exercise and they think either they think just going to the gym and lifting weights, or they think just doing some sort of cardio like tennis or something. But it's really, you need the combination of both for true overall like wellness. So let's talk about strength training and what kind of strength training there is. There's two different essential types of strength training, and that's static movements and then dynamic movements. So static is isometric exercises, so your muscle contracts without change in length of muscle. So what does that mean? That's something like holding a plank. You are working those muscles, but there's no motion going on, but you're still stressing the muscle and building new muscle fibers. The other one is dynamic exercise. So this is muscle contractions with change in length. So, and I have a slide in a second that'll show us better, but so this is concentric contraction and eccentric contraction. And these are things that you think of when you think of people at the gym. This is biceps and squats and all of those sort of things. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, and here's a good visual. Contraction, concentric contraction, you can see with the bicep curls. As you're moving forward, you're strengthening the muscle, and as you're moving away with the extension, you're also using the muscle and strengthening it. And then isocontraction or isometric again is the non-movement, but again, I think of things like planks and things of that nature. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. How are we doing on time? Okay. Okay. So, and when we think about resistance training, we don't want to hone in on just one subset of muscles. I know glutes are very popular right now, but we have to make sure that we do all the muscle groups. So that's legs, I like to break it up into lower body. So legs and glutes, calves, core, which would be your abs, obliques, and the lumbar spine, which is really, really important for low back pain. People with low back pain, this is where the one that you really want to focus on, because strengthening your core muscles are going to strengthen that. So when you have low back pain, everything kind of collapses down on each other. If you're able to strengthen the muscles around those bones, you can sort of bring them back and take the pressure off of them. And then upper body. So chest, arms, shoulders, all of those things. We want to make sure that we're incorporating all of these. And again, you want to be getting at least 2 sessions of this every week. So maybe pick lower body one day and abs for another, and then the next week maybe switch it up to one of the other ones. Okay, so I think we can go to the next one. Okay, and so what are the benefits of resistance training? So obviously you're going to increase muscle mass and decrease fat. The thing about muscle mass is the more muscle mass you have, the more calories that you'll burn throughout the day. And we saw that sort of in that calculation that we did as far as the caloric intake. What is your body weight and what is your exercise regimen or exercise level. So it burns more, you'll burn more calories throughout the day the more muscle mass that you have. You increase joint mobility, so this wards off bone loss. For women, this is important for osteoporosis. It increases, when you increase the muscle around the joint, you protect the joint from, damage, arthritic changes, things of that nature. And then the other thing is, especially with age, people start to become what we call like a fall risk. So the more lower body strength, the more core strength that you have, the less likely as you age, you'll become more prone towards falls. So these are just some of the benefits. Mood improvement, and we'll talk about that later in the mental health section. Okay, I think we can go to the next one. Okay, and again, we know that everyone is busy, and so what is important is trying to just incorporate little things throughout the week. So what I like to do or tell people to do is set out a calendar for the week and make appointments with yourself, make dates with yourself and say, I'm going to, walk with the dog in the morning. I'm going to do cycling after or jog after work. And even if you don't meet all of those workouts for the week, at least you've done some of them, most of them, one of them is better than none of them. So, and it's baby steps. I think we can go to the next slide. I think, again, these are lifestyle changes. This is a long-term commitment, because as soon as it's not, okay, going and doing one of these 28-day quick fix, like videos online. You can do that and you could probably lose some weight, but if you go back to doing everything that you were doing before, all of your progress will be lost. These are long-term goals. It's lifestyle changes and adjustments for these, for long-term sustained results. And the ideal gradual weight loss is better. It's found that people who lose like 1 to 2 pounds per week tend to keep the weight off longer than if you are to drop an excessive amount of weight very quickly. Those people tend to bounce back. And again, these are sort of those fad diets. You're able to lose a lot of weight, but again, they're not sustainable. It's not something that you can build a lifestyle around, and then you'll bounce right back up. And again, it's not just exercise or just food, but it's definitely both that are important, and it's both components of exercise as well. Set realistic goals, and even modest weight loss has health benefits. So this is improvements in blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar. Every little bit helps. And if you're starting from scratch, it's baby steps, but every step is important. So, okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, sleep. So sleep is a very popular subject. Why is sleep important? It's very important for mental health. It's very important for long-term morbidity and mortality. It's found that people who don't sleep have higher incidences of heart attacks, strokes, high blood pressure, weight gain, diabetes, all of these things that are mentioned here. So if sleep is an issue for you, I definitely urge you, we can go to the next slide. Here are some of the tips for conservative therapy for sleep. So make sure that you're making sleep a priority. So setting aside 7 to 8 hours a night. You want to avoid any caffeine or stimulants after lunch. You want to limit your intake of highly processed foods, especially at night. Exercise will help with this. Make sure that your bedroom is a place of sleep and not a second workplace, because the brain it makes it harder for the brain to turn itself off when it's constantly being stimulated in that area. So the bedroom should be for sleep, the bedroom should be for sleep almost completely. Okay. And then if you are still having issues and conservative measures aren't helping, I do suggest that you see your physician, because you could be experiencing something like sleep apnea, or it's definitely something that is worth being looked at and trying to help so that we can avoid some of these long-term comorbid conditions overall. Okay, I think we can go to the next one. Okay, so mental health. So let's talk about mental health. Um, okay, so again, I think when talking about mental health, sort of like with the foods, it's important to know really the components and what does mental health mean. Mental health is just like your brain is just like any other organ in the body. People like to talk about thyroid hormone and adrenal glands and cortisol. The brain is no different. We have neurotransmitters that are in charge of you know the operations of our brain. So what are the main neurotransmitters? We're going to focus on dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Okay, these are the three main neurotransmitters that are involved in mood and memory and sort of overall mental health. Okay, so, and you can see on this slide, there's overlap between them. On the side, you can see where if there's impairment. So so we think of serotonin and that's sort of like the happy neurotransmitter. The more serotonin you have, the more relaxed you are, the happier you are essentially. When you're low in that, it can cause anxiety, it can cause paranoia, can cause depression. Same thing with norepinephrine. It's important for your memory. If with lack of norepinephrine, people can develop conditions like obsessive compulsive disorders or sort of doubt and hesitation. Dopamine, this is one that is involved in motivation, mental clarity, working memory. When this is not in an appropriate range, you can be apathetic, you can be overly compulsive, things of that nature. Okay, so that's sort of like the basics of brain chemistry so that we get a good idea of sort of mental health in general. So, okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so exercise. So other than exercise being important for the things like we talked about, your joints and your bones and your weight, it also increases all of those neurotransmitters that we just talked about to increase mood, alleviate depression, increase focus. That is why exercise is important for your mental health, because it does play a role in your neurotransmitters. It helps regulate your wake-sleep cycle. All of these things are important. So the more exercise you're getting, the more release of these naturally that you're getting to increase and benefit your mood. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So some of the other ways. So other ways that we can increase our serotonin. Exposure to sunlight. Again, exercise. You see exercise here, exercise here, exercise here. Meditation. You can increase your dopamine by playing sports, learning new things. Just and oxytocin. This is one that is very heavily involved in childbirth, and this is one that's that we get from social bonding, physical touch, playing with pets, things like that. So these are some of the organic ways that you can increase these neurotransmitters to improve your mental health. Now, okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so what about when conservative measures, organic therapies are not effective? We do have medications. And these are sort of the basic classes of medications. There's more, but these are sort of the first lines. If you are feeling depressed, the first line treatment is usually something called an SSRI. So what does that mean? That's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So basically that increases that amount of serotonin in the brain. And these are things like Paxil, Prozac, Lexapro, Zoloft. Those are all these medications. Then there's serotonin and norepinephrine re-up intake inhibitors. So that's things like Effexor is the big one in that class, Cymbalta. So, and Cymbalta has other uses, but so if you are feeling like your mental health is suffering, and it's very, very common in this day and age with everything that's going on. I think I've had more people come to me with depression and anxiety than any other complaint, because everything is so uncertain, and everything that's going on in the world. So if you are feeling like your mental health is suffering, I think the problem is that there's a stigma against it. I want you to think of it as a chemical imbalance, just like anything else. And if you aren't able to improve that chemical imbalance naturally, there are medications that can help you. And I don't want people to feel like they're somehow, I just want to break the stigma, I guess I could say. And that it's okay to reach out for help, and that everyone needs help sometimes. And we don't have to, the first stop is not always medication, but medication is available. Okay, sorry, I know I'm running close on time, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so basically just overall health maintenance and preventative measures. So this is just sort of like making sure that you're taking care of yourself. Have you done your annual physical exams? Gone and measured your blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, all of those sort of things. Are you going for your routine gynecologic exams? Women 40 to 75 should be getting their yearly mammograms for breast cancer screening. And again, all of this, I know I'm kind of going fast now, all of this will be available to you, so you can go back to reference it. Everyone 50 to 75 should be getting their colon cancer screenings. Women 65 plus should be going for their bone density scans. I recommend dental exams every 6 months. Your teeth are important, don't forget them. Eye exams annually, especially live in Florida, I recommend skin cancer annuals. For vaccines, we do yearly adult vaccine, flu vaccines. When the COVID has a vaccine, we'll have a recommendation for that, but we're not there yet. Shingles after the age of 50, and then pneumococcal vaccine after the age of 65. The last couple slides are just sort of guidelines on cervical cancer screening, because I get that question a lot, and the pneumococcal vaccine schedule, because I get that question a lot. But since I am running low on time, I will let you guys look over those as you wish. And then my last thought is this one, and I think it's really important. You can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself first. I'll tell you that I have women all the time who come into me and they say, I haven't seen a doctor in 5 years. I've been too busy taking care of everyone else. And I will tell you that I've never once heard that come out of a man's mouth. And I hate to, nothing against any men in the audience, but I think as women, we're conditioned that to be a good mother, to be a good provider, to be a good daughter, we have to sacrifice ourselves, and you have to take care of yourselves, because if you're not well, you can't be well for someone else. Sorry. Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so make sure anybody that has questions, now's the time to type them in the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. I do have 2 questions I wanted to ask. It was interesting when you brought up the intermittent fasting, and you actually, showed slides saying that it was healthy. It could be healthy. Was that when it comes to that's not when it comes to dieting, that's in general. Is it healthier than not fasting?
Well, again, like I said, as long as you're doing it within moderation, as long as you're not taking it to an extreme. I don't recommend only eating for 6 hours a day. I think that's extreme. But if you're doing like a 12-hour fast, if you're stopping eating at 7 p.m. and then you don't eat again till 7 a.m., again, that's the same thing as not eating at, too late to when you go to sleep. So I think, and could you shave an hour on each end? It's, you could. And I do think that there are, because it does help with digestion. It does, help with insulin spikes and things like that. So I do think that there are health benefits, as long as you're not taking it to the extreme.
Okay. Yeah, that was interesting. And then also you talked about, and this might be a stupid question, but I got the floor here. So on the cardio, you had fat burning, cardiozone, and then, you could cause damage. Cardiozone, what does that mean versus fat burning? Is that where you're actually, cardiozone means you're exercising your heart, and when you're fat burning, you're not? Or
So again, when you're at that lower level of heart rate, you're going to be burning through your fats before anything else. So that's when you're in, again, you're burning through your fat stores. As you go up, you'll start to burn through your carbohydrate stores. And once you're in that cardio zone, yes, exactly. You're stressing the heart, not to that danger level, but you're stressing the heart that to the point to improve function and heart longevity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, does anybody else have any questions? Don't see any. I do want to ask, what got you into medicine? What was your story?
Interestingly enough, I thought I was going to go into psychiatry. That was what I was initially going after, but I fell in love with internal medicine. My original degree was in psychology. I was really interested in neuroscience, so decided to go to med school, thought I would be a psychiatrist, and I really just loved medicine in general. So
very cool. Well, I agree with you about breaking the stigma. Somebody had said once that if you were told you had a potassium deficiency or vitamin D deficiency, then you would go and buy those vitamins and take them. It's kind of the same thing with the serotonin or some of the mental, for mental health, that medicine as well. So, I appreciate what you said about, it's okay. If you get to a point where you need to take medication, it's okay.
Yeah, and there are natural ways to help with it, but at the end of the day, it is still like you can think of it as a hormone or a neurotransmitter. It's still a chemical. It's still an imbalance, no matter how you slice or dice it. So
awesome. Well, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I could see everyone's reaction, or I don't know.
Well, I could tell you people were engaged. Nobody dropped off. So, that's a good sign. People were probably taking notes, paying attention.
And yes, so everyone can have access to the slides. I put a lot of stuff in there, I know. And I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something or enjoyed it.
Absolutely did. Thank you very much again. Our best to all the folks at West Boca Medical.
You have a question.
I'm sorry, Cassidy?
You have a question in the Q&A box.
Okay, sorry. Somebody just put in, what do you think about hormone replacement for women in menopause?
It's kind of a controversial topic. It depends on, what the reasoning is and what your clinical picture looks like. Are you taking it just for hot flashes? If that's the case, there are other medications. If you're feeling just overall, if you're having like all the symptoms, hot flashes, sexual dysfunction, vaginal dryness, there are topical things for vaginal dryness. The problem becomes, there are risks with it. It can increase your risk for blood clots. It can increase risks for certain cancers. So it's not without its risks. I personally don't do the hormone replacement therapy just because it is quite involved and you do have to do some like specialized training, which I didn't do. But I do have many patients that are on it very successfully. They are very happy on it and don't have any issues. So it's really a risk benefit and sort of it's very dependent on what your individual situation is. But there are plenty of people that do it and do it successfully.
All right. Last chance to put a question in. I'll watch the question box while I remind everyone that next Friday is our Business Awards celebration. We would have done this in May, where we honor a Business Leader of the Year, Small Business Leader of the Year, and Business of the Year with 300-400 people at the resort. Obviously, that's not what happened, so we are going to be moving forward with it virtually. I think more than ever, celebrating these business folks at this time will be amazing. So that's next Friday, the 23rd at noon. And we will also be passing the gavel, but not really passing the gavel because our chairman is staying one more year, but we are going to welcome our newest board members at that meeting as well. So make sure you guys register for that. And I don't see any other questions, so thank you again, Dr. Schwartz, and thank you
so
everyone
much
that
for having
came.
me, and thank you for everyone who came. I wish I could see your faces.
Well, hopefully this time next year we'll be having you back and we'll be shaking hands. So.
Okay, I like that. I'm very hopeful for that. I'm a hugger, so that's like a.
So am I. So am I. I miss that a lot. So, all right. Well, thank you all.
Thank
Thanks
you
for coming.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.